everybody, Pat Huntoon here with Technique Junkies, and today we're going to be making that beautiful elegant poet background and sentiment that you saw in the beginning of the tutorial. So it's a very easy process and it's really pretty and very colorful. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to be using the I may not always be with you, I'll always be there for you sentiment from the Lavender Friendship Sentiment set of 4. We're going to be using S949 Elegant Poet background. It's a grungy, flourishy, pretty romantic background. And we're going to be using some Catherine Pooler inks along with Gold Shimmering Bliss. So the first thing we're going to do is cut watercolor paper. And I cut this watercolor paper to 4.5 by 5 3/4, which is 1/4 of an inch bigger than a normal A2 cardstock. I wanted to make sure I fit everything I wanted on here and still be able to use the magnet because I'm using a MISTI. I have this block here, which is 4 by 6. So you can also use a surface like this or the top of your MISTI if you want to add ink to it. But you need some sort of acrylic that can transfer ink to your paper. And we're using Gold Shimmering Bliss. Okay, so this is the gold. It's a very, very fine fairy dusting of gold. You can see it down here. It's not too much. So Catherine Pooler just came out with a new line to go along with the very small luxe line that she had in inks, which were Deck the Halls and Cranberry Fizz. These were previously released in December. She came out with 6 more inks to finish off the luxe line. So this is what is in that line. It's Dress Blues, Glam, Flame, Uptown, Martini, and Glitz. So we're going to be using 3 of these inks and on my acrylic block. Okay, so also we're going to be using the Midnight, which I absolutely adore this Midnight ink. It's my favorite black. A Versamark pad and white embossing powder. Okay, so let's start the acrylic block. So I'm taking my Glam, and you always start with the lightest color first, because it's okay to get a little light color on your dark pad, but it's not good the other way. And then I'm putting Martini, and I'm just rubbing this on. I'm getting a good amount of ink on here. And then Uptown, which is this beautiful tealy color. All right, and now I'm going to be taking the gold. And of course, when you mix the gold, and it's been mixed already, you want to move all the mica off the bottom. And the way you do that is to roll it. And that way you don't take the risk of getting them jammed up quite so much. So I am taking and just spraying that all over. You can see that gold moving around on there. Some people use water, but why not use gold shimmer? Can you see? I don't know if you can see how shimmery that is, but I'm just going to get this wet too because it adds to it. And then I'm going to take this and put it on here. Kind of move it a little bit, move it around a little bit so we don't have quite so many distinct lines. So I got a nice amount of ink on there. So I could do one of 2 things. I could just take this to start, take some of the ink off there and off the table. Now you noticed that I have a 4 by 6 block and I have a much larger piece of paper. So I'm moving it around on there. Now you could smush to get this, but I really like the look of applying it with the acrylic as opposed to putting the paper into it, smushing it. You know, we've done smush techniques forever and they're beautiful. This time out, we're just doing it a little different. Okay, because I didn't reapply any ink, this is much more homogeneous on this one. As far as colors are concerned, it's a little more monotone, but it's still pretty. So look at the very green on there, but look at the colors on this one. Okay, so we got 2 of them. Now I could keep going and pick up more ink there. I could add more ink to my block. I could just keep adding things to this to make it even more pretty. But what I'm going to do is just wipe it up and start with a fresher surface here. And if you wondered why my fingers were all blue and green before I even started, now you know why. So I'm just going to wipe that down and move my ink pad to the side. And I am actually, oh, look at this. Look at that. Can you see how beautiful that is? That is a beautiful piece of paper. And it's got just a small amount of shimmery gold to it. So these need to be dried before we do the next step. So let me grab my heat tool and dry them, and I'll be right back. Okay, so one of the advantages to using this nice heavy watercolor paper is that, and I mean, this is really heavy watercolor paper. It's probably the heaviest I have. But one of the reasons it's really nice to use is that you don't have any curling at all with all that water and all that heat added to it. And we're going to heat this even more. So that's kind of a nice thing. So now I'm just going to be using my MISTI. Now, if you don't have a MISTI, you can just stamp the way you normally stamp. But I am, okay, so true confessions here. Who else has this where you just keep using the same sheet of paper until it's so disgusting? So let's pretend you didn't see that. And we'll put that in there. Nice, clean piece of paper. Now, I have previously loaded my ink pad, my stamp in here, but I want to show you a couple of things. Okay, so this is a no-no. You do not want that to allow that to happen when you are stamping. Because if you do, you take the risk of pressing too hard with your MISTI or whatever, however you're stamping it, your acrylic block, and actually getting ink onto that portion of your stamp, the middle of your stamp, and that's just ugly. Nobody wants that. So, and in fact, what I'm going to do, remember that these ink pads are juicy. The Catherine Pooler inks are very juicy. So when you use them, you want to tap them lightly. And I'm staying away from that middle part because they are so juicy. See, I got it on there, but I'm going to wipe that off before I stamp because, ew, yucky. So we don't want to get that on the center of our paper. So let's get that good and inked. And I tap these, I don't rub these. Okay, so nice and inked on that. And what I'm going to do is just give this, I doubt that I'll get it on there, but you know, why take the risk? I'm just going to get that off. So much better. Look at that. So, you see it's quite grungy. There's areas here that it does not fill in. And if you look at the stamp itself, it's not meant to fill those areas in. It's a very grungy stamp. So don't stress if it's not totally filled in like that. Now, about the Catherine Pooler Midnight ink, it is embossable while it's wet. So I want to make sure that's good and dry. So now I've dried that. Let me zoom in just a little bit more so you can see. All right, so I've dried that, and now I'm going to take an embossing buddy and just go over the top. So I did get some black on my MISTI. I want to take that off. Now I'm going to be using a Versamark pad just to add some embossing fluid to the actual stamp. And I forgot, I want to turn this around this way because this is how I have it set up in my MISTI. Okay, so I've preloaded the sentiment into my stamp positioner. So I'm just going to add some Versamark to that. And we'll put some white embossing powder on there. And no, this is not how I usually do it, but I'm going to do it for the camera this way right now. Okay, so that should be good and crisp. I think I missed too many parts there. And let me just add some heat to that. I do want to mention that my embossing powder is not detail fine white, and that's really what I should be using, but I couldn't get my fingers on it, so that's not what I used. So I could stop here, but what I'd like to do is add some white splashes on this. So a couple ways you can do that. You can do it with paint, you can do it with ink. I'm just using a liquid pigment ink here. I'm actually going to put some on my table. And a toothbrush always makes it easier, or a paintbrush, whatever you have, and just kind of flick that. Okay, so I have a bunch flicked on there, as you can see. Really pretty. And just kind of get it off there. And I will just mat this, and this will be a completed card. Now, I do want to show you, and I'll do the same with the other one. I've done it where I've cut the frame all the way off. You see how I just have the actual poet part and cut the frame off. I don't know if you can see that. And on this one, I actually stamped the sentiment in black, which I like. I mean, I like it stamped in black, but I just think I love the contrast of this. And when this is on a white piece of cardstock, it's going to be beautiful. So that is our tutorial today. I hope you enjoyed our watercolored background with the Catherine Pooler inks and the Elegant Poet and the beautiful sentiment. Thank you for watching today. I hope to see you next time. Bye now.